Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in 1 minute. I'll give a couple of people time to get in. Don't worry, gentlemen. President Washburn, it's our world. It's your world. We're just living in it. And I think Chairman Dickey's outside, but we will go ahead and get moving this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for coming. Just as introduction to what we'll be doing today, as everyone knows, we won't be anytime during the special session. We may discuss legislation, but there will be no action as inappropriate. It's not part of the call that the governor made for anything to happen that would require a vote in this committee. It's very specific, and so the meetings that we will have will be informational and perhaps to discuss things to get us ahead of the game as we come back in January. But again, thanks to everyone for being here. I think we have a couple of people that are going to be joining us online. Just before we get started, as a housekeeping measure, I want to again recognize Courtney George from House Research that'll be with us this year, as long as I guess she can put up with the committee. That we're lucky to have her. She has a lot of institutional knowledge around higher education at both the USG and the TCSG levels, and we count on her knowledge and extensively. So I encourage all the members of the committee to stay in contact with her. I also, while she's being shy in the back of the room, want to introduce Kayla Bancroft. She is our new assistant, helping Chairman Nixon and I up in Capitol Force. Stay and wave so that they can see you out there. Helping us up in 417. Sarah Gallion left after session to pursue an opportunity in the private sector with a nonprofit and is doing well. But Kayla has been with the House for almost 4 years, and she previously worked with the retirement committee. She's very skilled in organization, which this chairman needs with things going on. And so again, I want to ask all the members to call upon Kayla if she can be of service for that. If there are anyone in the audience that wants to speak to an item today or speak to our presentation at the end, or speak at the end of the presentation, if time allows, we'll do that. If you would just let us know. They tell me there's a sign-up sheet over there. So with that, we're going to get started, and we have a presentation from the university system. We thank our interim chancellor, Mr. McCartney, for being here. If I can, I have one thing. Can I see you have a fleet of folks up in the table with you? Is Miss Altman here? Could you? Yeah, well, she didn't return a phone call from me this morning too, so I'd like to talk to her if she would come to the podium. Did you want to go first, or shall I?
Chairman, I will always defer to the chairman. I have a feeling my goal is for you to make Casey's face turn bright red.
Well, Ms. Allman, I don't know if you keep your phone with you in the morning or on a day of session like this, but it may or may not be true that I tried to reach you this morning without any success to wish you a happy birthday. So at this time before the House Higher Ed Committee, you'd be advised to move your mask down and see if we've, made you embarrassed at all.
Definitely.
Seriously, I know the chancellor also wanted to wish you. So please, Teresa, if you have anything you want to add, but thank you for being here on your birthday, and we appreciate everything you do for us.
Thank you.
If that didn't set us off on a good positive note for this afternoon, that we can't all get along, I don't know what is. With that, Madam Chancellor, I'm going to just let you take it over. We have 5 items that, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read off to let the audience know what we'll be expecting. We're going to do a fall semester update. We're going to talk about student success measures, a mental health initiative update, an enrollment update, and some affordability measures. And you have your staff to walk us through that. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I really do appreciate having the invite from you and the entire committee. And I've had an opportunity to talk to a few of the committee members over the last few weeks. On behalf of me and the entire staff of the university system, we really are thrilled to be here today, and I think it's important to be able to provide an update on the items that the chairman mentioned. We're also going to provide, Tristan Denley's going to provide an update on post-tenure review. We know that's been in the media, and so we want to make sure that we provide information and answer any questions that you may have. The other thing I really want to, before I jump in, is to really thank you as legislators for taking the opportunity to come onto our campuses. And, I've had an opportunity to be down at the aviation school down in Eastman and ran into a number of our legislative leaders. And, it was great for them to be able to hear all of the work that's being done at that institution. Had an opportunity to go up to Georgia Highlands College. Our chairman was there along with a few other legislators to be able to talk about some of the work that's been up there. And then really the number of legislators that also came out to our gala. And, Representative Bentley, I know I ran into you in an elevator, and I will emphasize, we will get you many Fort Valley masks. So we're working on that right now. The gala is really special to the university system. The point of the gala is to really raise money around needs-based aid. And so again, it's great that you as legislators are there and really understand the importance and what that means to our students at our institution. So just want to personally thank all of you for that. So I'm going to jump in. I'm a firm believer of, yes, I can talk about all of these issues, but I think it's also more important for you to hear from the people who are working directly on these items to really get an in-depth briefing. I'm going to be very high level, and then I'm going to turn it over to the experts and let them jump into all of the items. First thing that I want to talk about is fall semester. And, obviously that also generated a lot of questions and media articles over the last few months. Our institutions started the fall semester at the beginning of August, and the start dates varied from the beginning of August all the way to August the 26th. I will tell you, our campuses did a great job of being prepared to welcome our students. Our board is committed to having in-person learning. It's critical to the success of our students, not only academically, but also mental health. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Yes, our numbers, COVID numbers definitely spiked in the beginning of a semester, but let me assure you, we see that from the beginning of the pandemic. When we open our campuses, you typically do see a spike around cases. After a couple of weeks, typically 2 to 3 weeks, those numbers do historically drop. And just wanted to mention some of the declines in the numbers that we're seeing today. UGA released an updated number, I believe, this morning. And for this week, they had 21 positives on their case. The positivity rate is down to 0.17%. So again, once you get into kind of the swing of things of the semester, we do always see very, very low numbers around COVID. Really want to also thank our faculty members for being in the classroom and providing the supports that we need to our students, and also the staff, but more importantly, really the presidents. And it's critical for us to have the right presidents on this campus to be able to provide the leadership and to ensure everything continues. We have done and will continue to do everything we can to get students, faculty, and staff access to vaccinations, and we strongly encourage everyone when you're in a facility to wear a mask, and we will continue that approach going into the spring semester. On mental health, really want to personally thank Governor Kemp around funding that he provided the university system. He provided $11.5 million of an allocation from the GEARS funds. That was critical for us to get that $11.5 million. And we worked with really all 26 campuses in providing additional counseling services and also psychiatric services to our students. And again, Juanita Hicks has been leading that initiative. She is here today, and so she's going to be able to provide an in-depth update on that. It's important for us to be able to track how we spent those resources, for us to be able to come back to you and articulate how it was helpful. And what, I'm a firm believer of, when we implement initiatives, there's going to be times when we don't get it right, and we have to be able to acknowledge that and adjust. And that's the one thing that we're looking at, is kind of the lessons learned, best practices from the mental health work. Also, we have virtually Dr. Angie Bell. She's going to provide an enrollment update to the committee. We did release fall numbers, I believe it was last last week. I'm trying to remember. It was something about COVID. All the day, maybe it was Monday. All the days run together, unfortunately. What you're going to hear from Angie is that a majority of our institutions did see a decline in enrollment. We had 21 of our 26 institutions that declined in the fall. She'll provide a little more details on that. You know, we had all of our access institutions did see a decline, and it was anywhere from a 4% to a 16% decline. In addition to that, I'm going to have Tracy Cook. She is truly my favorite CFO in the state of Georgia. Provide an update around fiscal. You know, obviously, as a system and from our board, it is a priority to ensure that anything we do is focused on affordability. And so we continue to look at efficiencies and working with our presidents and the CBOs on campuses to, in a sense, to try to make sure that we're always keeping costs down for students. In addition to that, I will also mention we are working with the Senate. They have a Senate study fee committee. Chairman Lindsay Tippins is chairing that committee with a goal of having a report out on December the 1st. And so we are looking at fees in general of how we can tweak some of those, again, to make sure that we're consistent across 26 campuses. And, you know, happy to talk more about that. But again, that report will be due December the 1st. And then I'm going to have Tristan kind of end the conversation around post-tenure review. Obviously, you know, I referenced it earlier. There's been a number of news articles, not only in the state of Georgia, but nationally, talking about the changes that we did make as a system. Let me assure you, we did not get rid of tenure, and we will articulate of really what we did as a policy. And it's really around accountability. And then also we added a new measure to look at on annual reviews around student success. I'll also tell you, of course, we did get a complaint that was submitted to SAC-COC. And so both Tristan and I have had conversations with Dr. Belle Whelan around it and made sure that she understands as a system how we tweaked our post-tenure review policy. And I want to read you one sentence that when she responded back to the complaint, she said, "I would hope that all faculty would have that as a requirement and not just address it in their post-tenure review process." And she was really focused on student success. And the one thing I constantly say, regardless of who I'm talking to, if we're not focused on students, we are not making the right decisions as a system. And if we don't have students understanding the value that our 26 campuses provide into the state of Georgia, then none of us are going to have jobs at the end of this. And so we just cannot lose focus on ensuring that anytime a student walks on our campuses, that we make sure that we're providing the right supports to them to be successful. So I'm going to stop there and hand it over to Juanita. I believe she's the first one up.
Apologies, I get a little tangled up sometimes with my earrings there. Good afternoon, everyone. And so as Teresa mentioned, I am the project sponsor for the Mental Health Initiative. And to get started, I want to take you back actually to 2019 when then Chancellor Steve Wrigley initiated the Mental Health Task Force to identify areas across the USG and recommend how to immediately expand mental health support and services for our students. In August of 2020, so that work began and our internal committees were meeting to have those discussions. And then, of course, the pandemic came. In August of 2020, as Teresa mentioned, the governor provided the University System of Georgia $11.5 million in order for us to implement some of those efforts. And so with the work of the Mental Health Task Force, the Mental Health Initiative was born. And so part of those recommendations were to expand our service model, increase our training, ensure that mental health and well-being is the responsibility of our collective community and not just our counseling centers, and create mechanisms for ongoing assessment and evaluation of needs as we continue to evolve and address critical points in times such as the COVID-19 pandemic. But we all know that mental health was a concern and a need that needed to be addressed across our communities. And so in January of 2021, we actually began offering the expanded clinical resources to ensure that every student had access to telephonic psychiatric care and clinical counseling services. These expanded services are offered through a partnership with a organization by the name of Christie Campus Health. And we also offer in-person counseling options, a 24/7 hotline, and well-being support programs in partnership with Christie. It's important to note that these are wraparound services, and so students are still able to go and receive services on campus, but this helps us with the expanded needs that we've seen throughout the pandemic, and also to address some of the wait times that we were already experiencing prior to that. We've also instituted a USG Mental Health Consortium that looks to develop long-term service models and baselines for our 26 institutions to ensure that we have a strong service approach for all of our students, no matter which institution you attend. Individually, our campuses are also working with the JED Foundation, which is an organization that focuses on helping educational organizations to maximize services to prevent suicide and protect emotional health and well-being. 4 of our USG institutions were already JED campuses. And with the funding from the Mental Health Initiative, we've been able to expand that effort to all 26 of our institutions. And we will be the first system to do that across the nation. And so we're very proud of that opportunity. It's a 4-year program. And so it truly looks at what services we already have available, not just on campus, but within the community, to ensure that we have a good structure of working together to provide the varying support needs of our students. In addition to providing clinical support and resources, the Mental Health Initiative focuses in on training for our entire community to become more aware of mental health and how to provide help when the need arises. An example of this is our deployment of QPR training, which stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer. This training is available to all faculty, staff, and students. It's delivered virtually from the Mental Health Initiative core team, and a contingent of graduate students from the University of Georgia support this effort. We are able to offer 30 virtual sessions per week, and we'll be doing that through May of 2022. We do see good attendance across our spectrum, and it's very interesting to attend one of those sessions when you do have faculty, staff, and students having conversations together and becoming more aware of how they can support each other. Finally, while the students are our key focus for the Mental Health Initiative, we understand that it is important for us to also provide support for our faculty and staff. And so in partnership with the Office of Human Resources, and I often say in my day job, I'm the Vice Chancellor of Human Resources, we are working through our well-being programs to also provide more awareness for the support and services that we have for our faculty and staff. And they're also offered additional training opportunities as to how they can support themselves, but then also provide support to our students in the classrooms and within our communities. And so that's our mental health update. One additional point that Teresa brought up in another meeting to highlight is that we've also been able to support a suicide prevention conference that was virtually held, but mainly sourced from Georgia Southern University. And we had over 450 attendees attend that session to talk about mental health across our system. And we're preparing for a mental health summit that will be held at the University of Georgia. We will bring together practitioners and students to talk about COVID-19, mental health, and our path forward.
Is it okay if we take a couple of questions as we go? Right, okay. No, there's anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's been a couple of months, I forgot.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hicks, is it Ms. Hicks or Dr. Hicks?
Dr. Hicks.
Dr. Hicks, okay, I'll make sure I say it correctly. Thank you for sharing the information. You mentioned JIG campuses, did I say that right?
Yes.
And that stands for,
So JED is the name of the foundation.
okay, JED.
JED.
Okay,
JED.
okay,
Mhm.
JED, okay. And you mentioned about these JED campuses. It's a 4-year program, and each of these campuses receive funding to help with this mental health initiative. Once these campuses receive the funding, is there an accountability piece to report back to the Board of Regents of how well they're utilizing this money and the progress they've made with the mental health initiative?
So great question. And the JED Foundation, so we pay for the engagement essentially on the front end, and it's a 4-year program where we conduct surveys with our students and our community to talk about our current state. And then we also assess the availability of resources for each institution. Then the institution is tasked with establishing a strategic plan. And over the next then 3 years or so, they carry out that strategic plan. We do have 2 dedicated resources at the university system office that help support this effort. One person is primarily dedicated to the JED Foundation and their work. They're actually half-time, but they work with the institution to ensure that they are establishing a strategic plan. And then we do have periodic check-ins with our institutions to talk about progress. They provide us reports. And that is a part of our accountability measure, in addition to surveying our community after we've had some period of time to actually implement those plans.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And I'm fascinated by this mental health. It's something we talk about a lot nowadays up here in Atlanta. And the $11.5 million, to follow up a little bit what Representative Bentley, how is that long-term sustainable? I mean, how long will that 11.5 million last, and what will we do when that money runs out? That's what I'm trying to think in long-term to keep. I know mental health's not going to go away. Issues we have either at higher ed or K through 12, we got big issues there. So I'm sort of thinking, the chairman, how you might take your program and use it maybe in K through 12. Is it applicable kind of approach that we might look at?
I think we certainly have some opportunities where we can share what our best practices from this experience with K-12. I think what we see in our communities is that there are a number of issues and opportunities for people to receive support. Teresa mentioned that we're constantly evaluating whether or not our approach is the right way to go. We see that telephonic resources is helpful to some populations, but for others, they may need a longer term solution. I'll go back and add a little bit of context. So in the Christie campus effort, a student is able to have 5 sessions per issue. And so they can have as many issues that they need to have addressed as is required, but they have 5 sessions per issue. And so for individuals that need long-term care, we have to have a different solution. And that's when they come back to their campus or to a community resource. The $11.5 million, of course, that's finite of funds, and we have the ability to provide the support through the end of this year, beginning next fall. And so part of our assessment is to determine what worked well, and then look at our current ecosystem to see how we can continue the efforts that work well, and potentially request funds from appropriate resources to keep those efforts going.
Thank you.
Dr. Clark, Representative Clark, you have a question remotely for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the great presentation. Toward the end of the presentation, you mentioned the support for faculty and staff, and I'm assuming that's the FSAP program. Is this something that was already provided that you are expanding? And, or is this something new on the campuses? And if we're expanding it, how many, like, how are we expanding or enhancing the FSAP program for our faculty and staff?
And I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the program,
FSAP, at Emory, we call it the FSAP, so I just say FSAP, Faculty and Staff Assistance Program, which is basically provides mental health services for faculty and staff without, completely private, without judgment or cost or anything to that faculty member. And I was just wondering if that's new or if that's something y'all already had and y'all are expanding.
So thank you for the clarification. So in our language, we call that the Employee Assistance Program, which we already had at play. Of course, we also have our resources from our healthcare providers, Anthem and Kaiser. And largely for employees, it is a increased awareness campaign to be sure that employees know that they have these resources available. They can be historically underutilized for faculty and staff and just employees in general. So it's more so of removing the stigma, ensuring that people understand that these resources are available and making space for them to use them. The training components are somewhat new that we have, or increased, that we've increased our capabilities across the system and through the well-being programs.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And so we have submitted a second application for GEAR funds for another $5.6 million. And that would allow us to continue the work with Christie campus and the expanded clinical resources and the 24/7 hotline and well-being programs for our students, along with the additional training.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks. That's all the questions we have. If there are none further from the committee, will move on in your presentation. And thank you very much.
Absolutely. The next item is really to dive into enrollment. And like I said, Dr. Angie Bell is joining us virtually. Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Let me get my screen set up here. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Get rid of that as much as possible. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get it moved out of the way. One moment. It's not liking that. I may have to proceed with it up on the screen. So good afternoon. Today I am presenting fall enrollment trends in the USG. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. The fall 2021 enrollment in the USG is 340,638 students. That's comprised of about 146,000 students in research universities, 94,000 in comprehensive universities, 64,000 in state universities, and 36,000 in state colleges. Here is the 10-year trend in both headcount enrollment in blue and full-time equivalent enrollment in green. Since a small downturn in enrollment during 2012 and 13, coming out of the Great Recession, there's been a steady increase in enrollment with record high headcount every fall since 2015. Compared to last fall, however, the system had a slight decline of about 850 students, or 0.2% lower than last fall. 5 institutions had an increase in enrollment, while 21 declined and 1 had a very slight decrease, basically relatively flat. Despite the slight decline this fall for the system, enrollment remains more than 7,000 students higher than fall 2019. Full-time equivalent enrollment, which stands at about 291,000 this fall, declined by about 1.2%, or 3,400 FTEs this fall. The decline in enrollments related to several trends. First, an improving economy means more jobs that people choose over higher education, especially as employers offer higher wages and other incentives to fill those jobs. And in addition, national research has shown that a degree of uncertainty about ongoing effects of the pandemic and finances have contributed to enrollment decisions. We are seeing a different trends this fall by student level. Over the past 5 years, undergrad enrollment in blue has been increasing until 2020, but decreased by about 6,000 this fall, resulting in a decline for the 5-year period of about 2,000 students, from about 271,000 down to 269,000. Graduate enrollment, however, in orange has increased each year for the past 5 fall terms, resulting in an increase of about 18,500 students, from about 49,500 to 69,000 over the period. Most graduate offering institutions have had enrollment increases, with Georgia Tech driving much of the volume of the increase with its online master's programs. So when we look over the past 5 years, it represents about a 1% decrease for undergraduate enrollment and a 38% increase for graduate and professional students. How does enrollment in the USG compare to the US as a whole? This slide compares USG fall data in blue to national data from late September for all US schools in orange, and more specifically four-year publics, the institutions most like the USG in gray. For all students on the left, the USG in blue had a slight decline of 0.2%. Post-secondary enrollment for all US colleges in orange declined 2%, and there isn't a US figure for four-year publics. In the middle are undergraduates. Here, USG and four-year publics each saw about a 2% decrease, while all US colleges declined by 3% this fall. And on the right, we see that USG strong graduate student growth of 8%, while all US colleges increased by 2% and four-year publics by 4%. So in general, USG is experiencing similar trends as other institutions nationally, but is faring slightly better. If we break that change down from last year a little further by degree sought, we see the decrease in undergraduate enrollment on the previous slide is largely among associate degree seeking students, while bachelor's and undergraduate certificate seekers have remained relatively flat. In fact, associate seekers is one of the few degree levels that the USG fared worse than all US schools on the right. Below the line are graduate students, and we can see that USG outperformed all US schools in master's, doctoral, and first professional enrollment. The pandemic introduced unique challenges in how courses are delivered at our institutions. In this chart, we take a system level view of online course taking patterns. This chart shows in purple the percent of students enrolled all classes with a face-to-face component. In blue on the right are students enrolled in all classes that are completely online. And in the middle is green students with a mix of online classes and face-to-face classes. For undergraduate students at the top, of course, 2020 was an anomaly with way more online classes, but in general, as we progress from fall 2017 to 2021, moving down, we can see the share of students enrolled in all classes with a face-to-face component in purple has declined from 73 to 45%. At the same time, the percent enrolled exclusively online in blue has grown from 6% to 15%. But the larger increase in the middle is among those enrolled in a mix of online and face-to-face classes, which has grown from 21 to 39%. In-person classes and campus activities are an important component of a robust college experience, with undergrads showing an increasing preference for a mix of both face-to-face and online learning over time. These numbers for undergrads are similar to national trends. For graduate courses in the bottom set of bars, we see a different pattern. We see a similar pattern in terms of a declining percent of students in only face-to-face classes from 59% down to 36%. But graduate students are different from undergrads in that the larger growth is in students enrolled exclusively in online classes in blue, which has gone from 32 to 50%. The share of graduate students in a mixed schedule in green has increased only slightly. So what are the big takeaways? The fall 2020 surge of students enrolling in online classes has not retrenched to pre-pandemic levels this fall. Rather, we're seeing a continuation of a trend prior to the pandemic that more students are taking online classes, especially graduate students. This is a result of strategic efforts among USG institutions to develop online courses and programs to complement the existing face-to-face offerings and meet the changing needs of our students. I'd like to conclude with a slide about a key factor shaping enrollment in USG, the pipeline of high school graduates. This chart illustrates the actual and projected number of high school graduates through 2037, and the blue line marks the current year, 2021. High school graduates have been increasing for many years, but 2021 is the second of 3 years of projected declines. After that, the number of high school graduates is predicted to increase through 2025 and then decline through 2037 fairly markedly due to falling birth rates 18 years prior. Increasing enrollment in graduates in a time of increasing high school graduates is less challenging. This current and future decline in high school graduates will make it more challenging, but all the more critical for our institutions to find ways to maximize enrollment and success of that diminishing high school pipeline in order to meet the state's talent needs. This concludes my presentation. I'll turn it over to Tracy Cook to talk about affordability.
Do you want to do questions first?
If we could, are there questions? I'm going to ask one that is going to seem a bit odd, but looking back at your first slide in your inset was over the head count versus FTEs. And so the head count seemed to be.
Sorry. Here we go. There we go.
There you go. And you can't see it on the screen, the folks are in, but I have the ability to look over here. FTEs have gone down, but head count is staying the same. And I guess it follows up as a basis for my question that, so you have as many people 2020 to 2021, you have as many individuals in school, but they're taking a less of a course load. And you talked about that in some of the rest of the slides because of the things that were going on. Do you see that as a trend due to higher work demand, wage? I mean, do you see that as a longitudinal study? Is that going to continue in that we're going to have more people? And then the question, I guess, on that, and it may be for the group, is does that make it harder / more expensive to provide education if you're doing it for more individuals, but they're taking less classes? Does that have any kind of does that change the mix if it's getting to, if it gets to a certain point, does that change the mix in terms of what we're required in terms of housing and, all of the infrastructure, if that is a trend?
Angie, let me pick up the idea about the trend in enrollment. So I'll talk a little bit later on too about all the work we've done. We've been doing around the momentum year, and part of that strategy is to really enable and encourage students to take fuller schedules. We now know that that students being able to take as close to 15 hours each semester, that's what you need to be able to complete a 4-year degree in 4 years. And we know that that's the way in which actually all of our students are advantaged to be as successful as they possibly can be. What we've seen steady year over year over year over the recent past is that there have been increasing numbers of students who really have been taking that full load. So we've been really been able to be successful in both enabling and encouraging students to be able to take those full loads. But what we're seeing right now, we believe, is a temporary trend. That this is all about the pandemic. This is all about the way in which students are feeling about going back to classes, and certainly the situation that they find themselves in. That work challenges and all of those kinds of things. And so we believe this really is a temporary trend. And that we will return to.
So a quick follow-up, if I can, Dr. Denley, on that, and maybe for another meeting, or further discussion. So the question there is, we'd like to see people do it faster and do a 4-year degree. Is that what they want to see? I mean, sometimes life gets in the way with this, and that's the question I guess I'm asking. Can we, are we morphing our delivery of education? We talked a little bit about this earlier, that we've seen in the pandemic, some people want to buy an education and an experience, and some people just want to buy an education. And if they want to buy an education, and I don't mean to trivialize an education, but just in for simplicity in this conversation, if they want to buy an education, we need to sell it to them the way they want to buy it. And I think what I'm hearing for you is we're trying to do that through online courses and being nimble, I guess is the best way. So enough about that for now, and unless you have something else you want to add, but I think it's very important for us to continue to focus on what it sounds like you guys are starting to do. And that is, it'd be great if everybody goes in 4 years and they can afford to do that and stop life for a minute. But there are people going back to school that want to do that can't do it that way.
Yeah, this has been a really evolving picture over the last few years. That originally this idea was, it even had a name. It's called 15 to Finish, and it was all about really trying to get everybody to take 15 hours. You're exactly right. There are lots of students where their lives just simply, that doesn't fit. And so we really have been a national leader in refining that strategy, really recognizing, and we can certainly share the numbers with you, every student is advantaged by taking a fuller schedule, but clearly maybe not everybody is able to take 15 hours. But let's say they were able to take 9. Well, if they could take 12, then that would be better. If they were able to take 6 or taking 9, that would be better. And so we've really been trying to focus on strategies to enable those students to take all of the load that they're able to, recognizing that some of that is about exactly how it is that we offer the classes, the capacities, the modalities, when they're offered during the week, and all those different things. And so what we want to do is to offer as broad an availability as we can to then enable people to make the best decisions for them in ways that enable them to be as successful as possible.
Tristan, do you mind just providing an update on what we're doing down at Valdosta around e-degrees? I think
No,
that really
absolutely.
gets to
Everything it really does.
Chairman's question.
Yeah, so down at Valdosta, we actually created a new kind of online modality exactly around the ideas you were saying. So e-degree is really taking all of the lessons, the best in breed lessons around offering virtual instruction, online instruction. E-degree now, so Valdosta is offering 9 online degrees in that way. They have a single price point, so students pay one price per credit hour. That then covers all tuition, fees, books, technology, everything's all rolled into that single price point. The degrees were built online from the start, and the entire experience is delivered to students because they want that virtual experience. And then I think the last, which is maybe the most distinctive piece of this model, is students can begin tomorrow. So if you wanted to sign up for an e-degree today, Valdosta have you in class tomorrow, you can start straight away. So we really have been trying to be.
That's
responsible
interesting. And I don't know if we've talked about this, but with NCSL this summer, I went out west and learned a little bit about Governor's Western University. You may or you do it.
I'm familiar.
And for the committee, they're going to come in while we're in special session and give us a brief presentation of how they deliver. And it sounds like very much like you're talking about the e-degree. And it's 19 governors about 25 years ago. Am I right? 25 years ago, where they are not as fortunate, I guess, as we are in a more populated area. They had people that were hundreds of miles from a campus, and they had a need to provide a virtual type education experience. So they banded together and created this not-for-profit, I guess quasi-government. It's a not-for-profit, and the board is still, I think, the governors of the 19 states. But it's very interesting how they deliver it, because go at your own rate. At your own speed. Somebody could to take the courses and do it in 2.5 years. Somebody else might do it in 18 months, as long as you core competency in that area. So, thank you. Anything further? I won't delay. We do have a question. Dr. Clark, online or yes, virtually.
Yes, thank you. And I will try to not ask a question of every single person, but I wanted to kind of try to reconcile what we see on the slide that's up here, where basically over the last decade-ish, enrollment has been increasing, and year after year, we're seeing record numbers of enrollment. However, one of the last slides, we saw that over the same time period, and maybe I got my x-axis wrong, over the same time period, the number of physical people that are feeding into our schools is declining. So the number of physical people is declining over time, but that's not translating into people enrolling into school. When do you see this actually becoming something critical where we actually need to care about it? And you talked about addressing it, and what are some ways that y'all think that we can address it? Because I guess right now it doesn't seem like it's an issue, but I assume that looking at math, just knowing math, at some point there's going to be a breaking point, and we're going to go in the opposite direction because it's just physically not enough people. Has anyone done any calculations or a trajectory on when that breaking point will be and what we're going to do about it?
Do you want to jump in?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and answer.
Okay. Actually, the number of high school graduates was increasing until this past year, and the decline started last year. But last year, a dearth of other opportunities for high school graduates. So higher education looked especially attractive. Probably we're more or less in a plateau-ish period until 2025. It's after 2025 that I think we anticipate that we will see decline significant enough to affect our pipeline. I will defer to Tristan on initiatives that the system is working on to overcome that declining high school pipeline.
Yeah, and so really the initiatives are twofold. First of all, to try to encourage more high school graduates to go to college. Clearly, not all high school graduates right now think of college in their future, and we'd like to encourage more of them to do so. And that in itself will be helpful in this way. But also adult students. And actually, the e-degree is a really good example of the kinds of initiatives that we're really trying to put in place to specifically address the educational needs of adults. Clearly, high school graduates, we know long-term will begin to decline after 2025, 26, or so on. Adults, that population is not going to be declining. And so we know how crucial it is to offer those education experiences to adults.
Tristan, will you also add around just workforce and looking at what are the needs in the community and
Yes.
the institutions shifting?
Sure, yeah. So the ways in which we're now creating really the portfolio of educational offerings is really crucial to this. Clearly, we want to make sure that as we build the degrees that we are offering across our institutions, that they really meet the educational needs of the communities around them. We've completely changed the whole way in which we do our new program approval and program assessment exactly around that, to make sure that as we create new degrees and as we modify the degrees that we have, that we do that really in full partnership with the communities that surround our institutions. And I think I know I've talked to this committee before about our new Nexus degrees that literally we created specifically to meet the ongoing nimbleness needs of the major industries around the state. And again, we have now a dozen Nexus degrees at 7 institutions, and our first Nexus graduates graduated there in fall 2020. Yeah.
I have a question online that somebody's mic's not working, and I'm going to go to that. But before I do that, and this is just the chair's opinion, it may not reflect the will of the body here but as I like getting people to go to college because of what you said at the end rather than the beginning. I mean, I've never been a big fan. There's at least one person in this room that knows I'm not a big fan of universities taking out magazine ads, to try to convince you to come. I'm much more inclined to work with the community and have degrees, Nexus degrees that you invented, if you will, and created to do that, because I think it's just my opinion that sometimes we sell people on going to college and take them down a road that they're not really led. And there's other opportunities that we have folks from the technical college system here. And I know you guys do collaborate, the two systems collaborate, but there's also a bit of, there's always a bit of competition for the students and that's the customer, if you will. And I'd just like us always to stay focused on keeping the customer first. With that, Chairman Perkle asked me, I'm trying to phrase this for him and we'll get a nod if I'm doing it right. But he said, looking at the colleges and universities, the enrollment's down. He had heard or seen data across the system that some of that was because there were some entrance requirements waived at the research universities and at the other universities in the system, and some students that might not have otherwise been able to get access to, university, a research university, and might have gone to a different school. How much did that impact enrollment? And given that the entrance requirements will come back, will that sort of be a barometer to level out in enrollment? Whoever, I believe I captured that right.
No, you did.
He'll tell me here
You
in a
did.
second if I did or not.
Yeah.
We understood what you're asking.
Absolutely.
Oh, I just want to make sure I understood what he was asking me to ask.
So you're exactly right. So back, I guess now back in May 2020, I believe that's right. We moved our admission criteria to be test optional, and we literally did that because we worked incredibly closely with ACT and SAT, and they simply were not able to offer the tests to to high school students in a way where we could depend on that for enrollment as an admission as we traditionally had done. And so throughout the admission cycle for fall 2020, ACT, SAT was an optional part of that admission, and has been all the way up through this fall. We have now for the spring semester, which is just about to begin in January, we have reinstated ACT and SAT or ACT or SAT as a required aspect of that admission, which is the traditional way that we have done admission across our institutions. You're exactly right. We tried very hard. Clearly, we could only use high school GPA as an admission criteria, given the fact that standardized tests were not available. And we tried in the best way that we could to try to pattern admission to the different sectors using GPA as thresholds. This is the reason why we use both in our traditional way, is because both provide important aspects for admission. And so not having the standardized test scores did change it really changed the picture, in that there certainly were some students who were now eligible to go to a school which perhaps in the ordinary run of things they may not have been able to score appropriately on the ACT or SAT to be admitted to that institution. So it did change the distribution of which schools students could choose from. And clearly when you change the underlying choices, people make different choices, and they did go to different schools. We believe that will level itself back out now that we've reinstated the ACT and SAT, our traditional approach to admission.
Would you just add though, over the last few years, even before that, we were seeing declines in our access?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there is even over and above that, there is an underlying trend, and it's not unique to Georgia, that there has been nationwide a gradual decline in recent years in community college and state college sectors, and we certainly had seen that similar decline for ourselves.
Thank you. And this would probably go to Dr. Bell. Again, we have somebody online that may have missed that part of the presentation. The question is, how much lower was the enrollment at non-research universities? Can you highlight that point again? I know it was in one of your slides.
Give me 1 second here. I'm trying to back up. The total enrollment in the USG for the research universities. Give me 1 second to pull that figure back up.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to give Representative Carpenter, you're on deck for the next question.
That the research universities comprise 146,000 students out of this system. The research universities did see an increase this fall. The comprehensive universities saw a small increase this fall that was mainly led by a big increase at one institution. And then at the state universities and state colleges, there were declines.
Okay. And I think he was looking for the numbers on that, but we're going to take that offline and
I can provide that.
Yeah, if we get that to Chairman Purple.
Absolutely.
If you can do it. Representative Carpenter. Representative Carpenter, you still
Yeah,
with us?
thank you.
Carpenter, you
Is
still with us?
Yep. Y'all good? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
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 All right. So the question is, what are we doing on the expense side as we're moving forward? Because we see this big cliff coming and we know it's coming. It's a nationwide trend. What are we doing on the expense side to prepare for such an event, knowing that it's going to take some time to kind of clear through this decline in enrollment? Because obviously we know it's coming. That's the beauty of education, but sometimes we're maybe a little reluctant to make those changes.
Absolutely, Representative Carpenter. I'm going to have Tristan kind of walk you through some of the work that we've done at some of our targeted institutions that have seen some declines and had to address budget needs. And it really is going in and reevaluating what programs they're providing. And it gets back to what the chairman stated. We have got to be super focused. The reality is we can't we can't be everything to everybody. And so what are the programs that are needed in those communities to be able to drive the workforce development needs?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just as the chancellor said, we really have actually developed we call it a study group methodology to now go in and really look at the institution from every different angle. So this is from the academic point of view, the student affairs point of view. This is from HR. This is about course availability, program mix, numbers of students who are in each kind of program, and the way in which general education is being delivered. Really, all of that, all in one holistic package. We work with the faculty on that campus. We work with the academic and student affairs and the administration and the president too, and then really are able to give a very detailed 360-degree understanding about what it is that's happening on that campus, how that contributes or exacerbates upcoming financial challenges, which may be either they're just beginning to experience or will experience in the near future, and then really craft recommendations going forward as to how that means that they may well have to adjust their program mix, the underlying faculty body. We've now done this with now 4 or 5 institutions are in the throes of doing that, with a couple more right now, and I think it'll be the pattern going forward. Yeah. Thank you.
That's all the questions we had for that.
Which actually Representative Carpenter had the perfect segue, because now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Cook to talk about the financial side.
Thank you. Angie, I don't know if you're still on, if you can bring up the slides, or the committee may have the slides, but I really wanted to talk a little bit about affordability. So obviously the responsibility of educating our students is a shared responsibility with the state. And we thank you for the $2.5 billion that's provided to the University System of Georgia. And that's coupled with the tuition and fees that we collect from our institutions. And so those are the main revenue streams that we use to support the education mission. But affordability, and you've heard us say this a lot, and I feel like we don't talk the talk, we walk the walk here. It's one of our top priorities. And so the first thing I want to talk about is tuition increases. You know, we understand we are affordable, but we pay attention to our tuition fees. And so you can see from the slide, over the last 6 years, our average annual tuition increase is less than that of inflation, 0.75%. Of the 6 years, we have only increased tuition to our students 2 of the 6 years. Additionally, mandatory fees are another component of the cost of education for students. And this is something that back in, I want to say 2012, 2014, we really wanted to make certain that, and our board was committed to doing this, that we really understood mandatory fees and looked for opportunities to challenge our institutions to make certain that we were doing everything that we could for these fee-supported initiatives to keep those costs low to students. And so that means being more efficient. That means looking at, and even in that, we talked about faculty and academic programs, but even on the other side of the house, you know, what programs are helpful and useful and beneficial to our students, and streamlining those that are not. And so as you can see, we have made significant strides in keeping the number of fee increases to students low. So much so in fiscal year 22, we had 0 increases to any of these fees. These fees support a lot of the activities and, you know, athletics, academic, student activities, health, and all of those things that augment the instruction component for our students. Another additional piece that we've worked on is textbooks. That was another pretty significant cost for our students. We have had initiatives for the last couple of years. We are now saving students to the tune of $49 million per year by having many courses that have either no textbook costs or very low costs. That's over 10,000 of our courses have this type of setting so a student can enroll. And there is zero cost. There's no walk to the bookstore. There's zero cost for them. They are able to get that textbook electronic or those materials electronically and mostly on day one. And that represents about 25% of the courses that we offer. And so that has been ticking up year over year. Our efforts haven't stopped. We'll continue to work on that as well. And I do want to make one more point on affordability. It's just when we think about degrees awarded, right? And we know our enrollment growth has been about 7% since 2021. But the number of degrees that we're conferring to students has increased 29%. We are at 70,000 plus degrees awarded last year to students. And so we're doing that. We're doing, I think, a fantastic job in making certain that students are getting to the finish line. Angie, if you'll go to the next slide. The next two slides I really love. It's a point of pride for the university system and hopefully for the state as well. These are the SREB or Southern Regional Education Board states. There are 16 states that make up this unit, and the bar in yellow is Georgia, and you can see that we are third lowest. Oftentimes it's not good to be low, but we're third lowest in median tuition and fees across all of these different states. We're able to do that for two reasons. One, just to reiterate the support that we do receive from the state, as well as just our internal efforts to make certain that we pay attention to tuition and fee costs to our students. I know a few years ago we were fifth, and then we came down to fourth, and we are now third lowest across these states. And then just quickly on the next slide, this is a national perspective. So if you look across all of the states across the US, we are 13th lowest across all the states in four-year public tuition and fees when you put those two together, which is, again, it says that I think we're doing the right thing by way of our students and parents to keep fees and tuition low. It doesn't mean our efforts stop. There's still work to do. We are constantly, Teresa mentioned in the intro, we're constantly looking at opportunities to think about fees and fee structure and the overall cost for our students. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to do that. It does cost money. I don't want to sound like we can do all this for free. It costs money to educate students, this, and there are pressures. We are seeing increase in costs in certain areas, but again, that's not going to stop our efforts from looking at ways to continually make certain that students are getting the best education at a quality cost. So I'll stop there.
You have questions? Okay.
Chairman, can I have a quick follow-up on that?
I don't know. Well, I'll take a show of hands here in the room and see. Yeah, yes, sir. Go ahead.
So on that graph that you just showed us, that's excellent. I wonder, is there a graph that shows the combination between what the students pay and what the state pays to kind of to level that off to see, how do we rank when you add those two together versus all those other states?
We do. And I don't have it today, but I can definitely share that. And again, if I go back to I know we have it for the SRAB, but again, it's that state support in combination with our affordability measures that allow us to do this. I've been on calls and I can't call off the states, but I just remember in talking with some of the different states and just the way that they're funded, it is very haphazard. It is not consistent. And so we are very appreciative that for the funding formula and the way that the funds come, it's very predictable, which helps us be better stewards and provide the education to our students at this cost. When there's no predictability of how you're going to be funded, it makes it very challenging for any states to keep costs low, because they're having to make up the difference, because at the end of the day, we have to pay the staff, we have to pay faculty. But that constant level of funding and support from the state truly helps. But yes, I'll put that together and we can definitely share that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Conford. We have a question. I want to, I guess, make a comment and a question again. Teresa, you're making eye contact with me. I'm sorry. Madam Chancellor making eye contact, because I think you may know where I'm going with this, but we've known each other a long time. you know, appreciate the value and appreciate our university system, from the sticks and bricks to the people, to, you know, the most eminent professor, to the person that turns the last light off after the building's taken care of at the end of the day. We do that, but I hope as we're looking at the expenses, we remember that the most important thing in our university system is the client, is the student. I mean, I appreciate all the people that work there. I truly do. But at the end of the, I just want to stay focused on that if the needs of students are shifting toward an environment, toward fewer people walking the campus, and this is going to, there's no president in our university system that's going to, you know, send me a card for saying this, but it's not the most important thing to get a new building if there are less people coming on campus. The most important thing is to develop a curriculum that can get people ready for the workforce. We've got to remember that, you know, it's lean times may be ahead of us for a variety of reasons. Ships parked off the coast. I mean, my fault, your fault, nobody's fault. And I really appreciate the fact that y'all are looking at that, and just my reinforcement is please continue to do that so we can deliver for your clients, the students, whether they be 18-year-old students coming out of high school or you know, folks in various places in their life and career that are going back, if we can do that. Number 8 is that Chairman Smyrie and Mr. Ambassador. Don't do that yet. We won't. Chairman Cameron Smyrie, please.
I have a two-part, and I'm gonna probably call y'all afterwards because I really want to drill on this. But years ago, when the university system got out of dormitories, residences, and the foundations started building housing on the campuses, how do you build that cost in? In other words, when the foundation builds it and is paying for it through the foundation and administered by the foundation, how does the university system calculate that into tuition and fees, and how is that building in?
It is actually separate, and we have.
Okay, how do you tell me about that?
Absolutely, and I'm going to pass it over. I could clearly articulate it to you, but obviously Tracy can probably do a better job, so I'll let her. But it's definitely different, and it's really based on a performance.
So I'll talk about it in two paths, because we have housing, but then we do have a couple of these projects that you're talking about that do reside in the mandatory fees. So from a housing perspective, what we do is we build X number of beds, right? And so there's a pro forma that's built to say what are our best estimates regarding occupancy, and we try to determine, okay, what is the price point for our students? And so that is I call it an elective, more of an elective charge to students. It's not a mandatory fee. So those figures are not included in here, but we look at market rates. We look at if there's other housing on our campuses as we build, to make certain that what we're building is still affordable to students. One of the other things that we have also built are health centers or wellness centers or student activity centers in addition to the housing. Those fees, same thought process. The thinking was, how many students at the time we were building it, right? One, is there a need for activity space and recreation for students? Two, once that determination is met, we then look at what is the enrollment. How many students do we think will be paying the fee in the future? And so we project that out. Most of these projects are 30-year projects, and we try to estimate what is the cost to, the debt service and other costs associated with running that building. And then we back into a fee. So those fees are in that mandatory fee bucket. And those are some of the fees that are a little bit more challenging when we look at affordability and keeping fees low. And so the chart that I pulled up before, when you looked at in 21, we had 8 fee increases. All of those increases were associated with fees that support debt service. And the reason is a lot of the assumptions that we made, right? Because the world is constantly evolving. Students are looking for new ways and new delivery methods. As more and more students are shifting to fully online, the number of fee payers of these fees is changing. And so we're having to adjust our estimates because we have to generate the revenue to pay the debt. But that's something else that we're looking at, but we're always looking at opportunities. We refi whenever we can to take advantage of interest rates. So we're looking at other ways to keep costs low. But in those instances, you'll see those are some of the ones that we have more pressure in having to increase fees.
And Tracy, do you mind walking through some of the processes we put in place to ensure if anything now is built,
Yep.
we can sustain it?
So there's another graph I love. I don't have it today, but there was a time when Angie showed the enrollment. We were growing when we came out of the recession, right? A couple of years after. I mean, we were growing like gangbusters, and there was an assumption that growth would continue, and so we were building on our campuses, and it really didn't have what we do now. I think in around 2012-ish again. We put together what's called an integrated review team, and it includes academic affairs, it includes fiscal affairs, it includes facilities. And the group sits down in the room, and anytime a project comes forward from an institution, it really goes through a high level of scrutiny before that project moves. And if I had the graph, you will see that there was a significant decline in the number of projects that have just been approved in the last 10, 12 years. And so I think that process is working. Again, it has a direct correlation to fees. And so that process alone has aided in affordability and making certain we're using the space that we have on campus already. We're doing a lot more by way of repurposing as opposed to building new. So I think that's just been helpful as well. But I love the committee is great. And the chart, if you could see it, we have just significantly reduced the number of projects.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you all about that further. I remember in the early 2000s, it was only fiscal affairs. I'm glad to hear that it's more collaborative
Absolutely.
now, because at one point in time, we were building, foundations were building, and then the university allowed that. Then when it comes to the amortization of the bonds, it might not fit the marketplace, and we had to go back to the market on several occasions and lower the bond market rate so that it was a quote unquote affordable.
Yeah.
Because if you build a building for $40-50 million and your student body goes down and your amortization rate, you still got to pay the bond, you still got to pay the money off. So I like the collaboration of all the various units being involved in that decision making, because if it's just up to the university to go build a dorm, I'm in a residential hall,
They're gonna build it.
so.
I also mentioned the approval of our board, so it's more than just an internal review. It still
Okay.
has to actually go to
All
our
right.
board. to
Absolutely.
get-
All right, I don't want to take up too much time today, Ms. Chairman, but I do want to follow up with you all on that. And another matter is the fees, the mandatory fees, and how that's applicable across the board. In other words, when you start talking about fees, athletics, student activities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I really need to drill on that, because there's a direct correlation on athletics and fees. And some universities have the resources to be able to call somebody. I remember talking to a president one day, and they started a $50 million fund at the university. And he told me they just stopped at 85 because, and so I'm thinking about our HBCUs now, but here I am talking to a president having a $50 million fundraiser, and he just was like, we stopped at 85 when I got to 85 bucks an hour. And then others need money and don't have the opportunity. So this is an HBCU question. And of course, I'm a Fort Valley graduate. And so, that's always on my mind. And I want to put it on.
And Dean
y'all's
Spirey,
mind.
we can definitely find time and walk you through all of
Okay.
that. And we are also, and I mentioned it earlier in the opening remarks, there's a Senate study committee fee. Chairman Lindsay Tippins is chairing that. And so we're working very closely with that group, and we'll have recommendations by December the 1st, and happy to be able to walk the House through those recommendations. And then I will also just add, I'm really looking forward to being with you on Friday night to really celebrate Fort Valley
Yeah.
and Albany State. So I'm going to
I'm
figure out
looking
how I
for-
can support both
I'm
of you.
looking forward to you at the chairman's reception.
I
Right.
will be there with bells on.
You gained a lot of great.
And Chairman, the last item we have. is
Well, let me
post-tenure
ask you if I
review.
can before you do it. Please expand, tell the committee where you're going to be on Friday. It's the ball game. Yes.
So it is the Fountain City Classic
Right.
Gala that I will be attending and
Give that to Sharon.
looking
You never
forward to
know Who
being,
we might need.
looking forward to being in Columbus
Yes.
Friday night.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. I know that's telling us we've talked too long, I suppose. I know the new president at Georgia State, we had discussions with him over some of the fee structure and some of the e-tuition and some of this. So I appreciate the work you've been doing, but it's very important to the chair here that you spend a lot of time with Chairman Smiley. Those senators have a lot on their mind over there. All of them are running for something else. And Chairman Smiley is laser focused on this while we still have this man. I was kidding about my friends in the Senate, but I'm deadly serious when I say this. While we still have this gentleman's institutional knowledge in this body, we need to make use of it.
Absolutely.
And I sincerely mean that. So I know you will. I appreciate it. Your next item is?
The last item is post-tenure review, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Denley to be able to walk you through what our board ultimately approved. And like I said, there's been a lot of media around it. So we just want to make sure you as legislators understand the changes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so really the changes around post-tenure review began a little bit more than a year ago. Then Chancellor Wrigley created a working group back in September 2020 to look at post-tenure review. We put post-tenure review in place in our system back in 1996. We were actually one of the first systems in the country to introduce post-tenure review. And really the process that we put in place that once every 5 years, tenured faculty members go through an assessment, a review, if you will, that's carried out by faculty colleagues. So there's a post-tenure review committee who then looks at the record of that faculty member in the classroom, the research, the service, all of that. And then they look to see how that played out over the last 5 years. And then they make recommendations going forward as to perhaps what are ways in which they might be able to improve or great work that they've done. So that process has been placed for 25 years, but has really been largely unchanged in that 25-year period. Chancellor Wrigley thought it was a really appropriate once every while to look at. 25 years is a long time. A lot's changed. What are ways in which we can understand what we've learned, what needs to be changed, what are things that are working, things that aren't, and that. So the working group did that work. Took about 9 months, really digging into that, reaching out to other systems to see what it is that they're doing, but also reaching out to the faculty across the system. We had a large survey, about 800 or 900 faculty told us what it is that they thought was working, what wasn't working, and then that committee ultimately produced a report last summer. The recommendations of the committee were really largely twofold. First of all, to really take a good hard look at each institution about how it is that we can make that process be much more supportive, much more built to help faculty members' careers evolve across their full career, across the lifetime that they're with institutions, but also to create a greater level of accountability, because the reality is that we know that these are public funds and we want to make sure that faculty members really are across their careers performing at the level that we would all expect them to. And so the big change around the accountability was that rather than having to wait 5 years each time, if a faculty member 2 annual reviews in a row was adjudged to be performing unsatisfactorily, then that would trigger so-called corrective post-tenure review. So at that point, an administrator has carried out those 2 annual reviews and found that this faculty member is not, in their judgment, performing at an appropriate standard in some aspect of their job performance. That then triggers that committee of faculty colleagues to come together, take a deeper look into what it is that's happening in that faculty member's career, creating a performance improvement plan to then allow them across a full year to make appropriate redress, to make appropriate corrections to their work performance. And at the end of that, then when we look to see whether or not those appropriate deliverables have in fact happened, well, if they've not, well, then the president then is in a position to impose some kind of remediation, which might be a whole host of different possibilities, but could ultimately mean that faculty member being dismissed from their position. So that's the change when it comes to accountability. I think, as the chancellor said, it has been widely reported that in doing that work, we have ended tenure. I hope you will agree, we have in no way ended tenure at all. It was always the case when we introduced post-tenure review 25 years ago, that if someone was simply not doing their job in an adequate way, in the opinion of their colleagues, that might ultimately lead to their dismissal. And that's exactly where we are now, that there is still that robust process with appropriate due process mechanisms and appeals all the way through, ways in which we treat people fairly, but with an expectation that they really do continue to do their job across a career. The other thing that we have introduced, which actually really is completely new across the nation, is to add a new assessment element into the way in which our faculty are assessed, and that is student success activities. Traditionally, faculty members are assessed on research, teaching, and service. I think everything that we've talked about this afternoon, I hope it is the case that you believe that this system is laser focused on the success of its students. We absolutely believe that students who come to us need to earn credentials of value and then go out in the workplace and have a successful career and support their families. And so that's what we want. We want student success. And the work that we've been doing in our system really has been nationally recognized about ways in which we're helping our students be successful. Actually, our graduation rates since we began this momentum year work back in 2017, graduation rates have gone up 20%, 30% for African-American students, 50% at our HBCUs. So the work that we're doing around student success is really paying dividends. And as Tracy said earlier, we're graduating more students than we ever have before. Well, our faculty members are doing that student success work. It's just the traditional way in which their careers are assessed as they go through those different levels of review never took that into account. And so this new aspect of evaluation will now give us the opportunity to recognize the great work that our faculty are doing around student success. So those are the changes around post-tenure review. Happy to take any questions.
Are there questions to the committee on that? Number 10, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for presenting this again. And I know there has been a lot of discussion in the media, and I really appreciate you presenting what you're trying to accomplish. And I asked this question before. I just actually have two questions. The first one is I want to go back to the student success, and we spoke about before. I just want to still understand very much that we have different professors doing different things, being involved with student work on different levels. So I think it would be helpful for everybody here to understand how this is weighted in, so that professors who actually are more involved in research than direct student involvement, like more teaching classes or more research professors. So, I mean, not every professor does similar work. So if you could elaborate a little bit on that,
I can, and thanks so much. The first thing that I need to point out is that all of these criteria are absolutely campus-based, in fact, really departmentally based at each campus. So as our institutions are now moving into the phase of implementing this work, all of those criteria will all be collaboratively created at each particular campus. And then, just as you say, each particular faculty member now needs to be assessed on the work that they do. And so one person's job may actually be a substantial amount of research and perhaps only a little teaching, where another faculty member at another institution, maybe all they do is teach, and research is a much smaller component. So it's always been the case, and will be again, that the way in which those criteria are weighted are dependent on exactly what what are the job expectations of that faculty member. It's a great point. Thank you.
So thank you. So it will be individualized on what basically the job description for this specific professor is.
And the policy language actually is very specific about that expectation.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. And if I may follow up with one more,
you said there's a lot of media attention, and the AAUP was very critical, and they said that they're considering filing a censorship. Is that anything you will address, or are you concerned about, or is that?
So
I see head shaking, so I guess no.
I don't want to speak to the AAUP. They can speak for themselves very adequately, but the basic.
Dr. Keelan, if you could,
Yes, sir.
our Representative Kaiser, if you could tell us the acronym you used.
Yeah, so the acronym is good. American Association of University Professors.
Okay.
So just completely went out of my head. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the main bone of contention, I believe, with the AAUP is really around due process. That traditionally, when faculty members have tenure, that to be dismissed, for them to lose tenure, requires a significant level of appeal and due process and assessment by their colleagues. We believe that in what it is that we have put in place, we still have a very vibrant level of due process and review by colleagues, just as we always have. We don't anticipate that in any way being lost in this new process. The AAUP, I think, respectfully disagrees with us, but I think we believe that what we have in place maintains that appropriate due process in just the way that it should.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that explanation. And it sounds rather simple, this new process for tenure. And I guess this is a question for those that are critical, but I'm going to ask anyway. It seems so very simple, and tenure is still here. Why is it such a big issue? Why are the critics so against this new process?
So I believe it to be the case that certainly from the AAUP standpoint, they believe that that tenure really is it's a status which one cannot really lose. That once it is provided, other than in some extraordinary situation, that faculty members simply would never be able to lose that status. And I think we all, at least I know this is what we believe, and my suspicion is it's what you believe too, that if it's something that's that important, there should be an appropriate level of accountability to make sure that people really are continuing to perform their jobs at an appropriate level. And if they're not, well then.
And that's the word I want to hear, accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Exactly.
important.
That's
So
exactly
thank you.
right. Yes, yes. Thank you.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, that was the secretary of our committee, Representative. I like the way you got to your point, Madam Secretary. We have Dr. Clark. We've taken a hand vote, and you get to ask another question.
Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much. I appreciate y'all's consideration. And thank you for the presentation. I've asked this question before to you directly, but I want to ask it again in a different way. And then I also, Representative Bentley's question actually sparked another question. So if I may, I would like to also ask a second question. But my first question is, a lot of times the people who are critical of this say that this feels very punitive. And but in your presentation, you highlight how this will help professors highlight all the great things that they're doing. But from my perspective, it sounds like more of this is just to really highlight the bad things that they're doing. Because if we're holding people accountable, this review process doesn't sound like something where we're going out and highlighting all the awesomeness. We're looking for the bad things that they're doing and then trying to correct those bad things. So what would be your response to someone saying this is actually more punitive than actually this idea of it highlighting success and the great things that professors are doing?
Yeah, so I guess I don't agree that assessment is punitive in this way. I mean, the reality is that in all of us, when we are doing our jobs, there is an expectation that we do our jobs to an appropriate level and with an appropriate rigor and an appropriate commitment. And so simply being assessed in that way and finding all of the places where perhaps we are excelling or perhaps are falling slightly short of the mark. That's not punitive. That's exactly accountability, as Representative Bentley alluded earlier. So, and I think overwhelmingly, and this has really been the conversation across our campuses, I've now met with, I think 15 of our campuses had open meetings with faculty, 400 or 500 faculty at a time on these virtual meetings. There is an overwhelming feeling that faculty members do recognize that they are already doing all of these kinds of tasks, advising, mentoring, working with students as they move on into graduate school or across into their careers, working with one another to improve their instruction. The work that Tracy alluded to earlier about adopting open education resources or creating new kinds of instructional materials. All of these kinds of things are part of an ongoing faculty member's role and have been for years and years. It's just none of those things were included in the traditional ways in which we assessed a faculty member. And so really the reality was we were expecting faculty members to do all of this work. We want our students to be successful, but when it comes to the progress of their own careers, we're saying, well, we're not going to look at this, we're only going to look at that. And that, I believe, really was pretty unfair. And so I really do think actually that overwhelmingly this is about recognizing the good work that our faculty are doing. And it will put it in a different light, because the reality is that in the past, because those activities were not included in the things that faculty members were judged on as far as their career evolution and their promotion, those activities were viewed in a different light. They will be viewed differently today because they are now part and parcel of what it is that faculty members are judged on for annual and tenure and post-tenure review. Thanks.
And if I can ask just a very quick follow-up question, how do you all think that this is going to affect recruitment of top quality professors here in Georgia or to Georgia? And I say that because we've seen how tenure has been weaponized against certain people. The latest example is Nicole Hannah-Jones. Basically, the university that she was working at weaponized tenure when she put together the 1619 project. And, you know, there are instances where one might say, oh, well, students are complaining that you are talking about slavery in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. That's a notch on student success. And therefore, you know, that's going to trigger some type of review. And it could stifle a little bit of the academic freedom that we expect when you're in a tenured position. And so do you see this affecting recruiting top professors to our top institutions by kind of maybe you didn't intend to, but inadvertently stifling academic freedom and the ability for people to really like do their work without fear of punishment?
So I really believe that our system has an astonishingly strong track record when it comes to academic freedom and the way in which we support ongoing research and excellence in the classroom. I don't see any of that changing in the way in which our system unfolds in the future. And in fact, I believe we will, in fact, attract faculty members who are committed to the success of their students in ways that, well, the reality is we are distinguishing ourselves across the nation in that way. And I think we will attract faculty members who have that like mindset, and we certainly would very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I greatly respect my colleagues' questions, my sweet mate. But I just have to say that I think for me, this tenure issue is a way to definitely hold people accountable. And in some ways, in my opinion, I see it as a way to protect students also. So when faculty or just decide to do things that are not in their job description, that makes students feel uncomfortable, now they can be held accountable. But in regards to recruitment, in my opinion, when people are, you know, when you take on the responsibility in whatever job or position that you're in, if you're doing the things the right way, you know, you shouldn't be really overly concerned about anything other than you doing your job according to your job description. But I just see it as a way, and this is again, no backlash to my colleagues' questions. It's just my personal opinion. I just kind of see this tenure debate as a way, for me, for tenure, another way to protect students also, and just really holding people accountable. Because it's just oftentimes there's just too much going on in these campuses and in any organization, and people are not being held accountable. So I just I see this as a way to kind of address that in a different perspective.
Representative Bentley, I really appreciate your comments. The reality is, from my perspective as the acting chancellor of the university system, on any given day, we have about 100,000 employees that get a paycheck from us. We serve a little over 340,000 students. And the expectation, if anybody is on our payroll, everybody has to be accountable. It is tuition funds, it is fees, it impacts families. And it also is about $2.4 billion of state general funds that most citizens pay into the state. So we have to ensure everybody's accountable, but just want to thank you for your comments.
Okay, I'm gonna wind this up here and ask Dr. Denley a question, and I don't want you to think about this. You just did one of those make the chairman go moments. We have 100,000 people in the university system. It takes 100,000 people to deliver education to 340,000 students.
It is, we have about a little less, about 50,000 full-time.
Okay, all right, there you go. All right, there you go. That's fine.
Student workers.
That's fine. I
it
was
is
just,
grad assistants, it's teaching
inquiring.
assistants.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm with you. Okay.
regardless of if
when
they-
if you throw the 100,000 to be a grad student that may get a check for 2 hours a week, I'm gonna just, you see where my head went. I went,
Regardless if someone's getting $100 a week.
No, that's fine. I'm
Everybody's held
good.
accountable
I
for
just,
doing a job.
those things pique my interest. Somebody on your staff back in the audience kind of looked when I started to ask that question, because this is when the inquiring minds wanted to know. Dr. Denley, relative to that, Dr. Clark brings up the scenario about the project and this. It's my understanding, and I'm not in academia, and I'm not near as smart as the people that will be dealing with this and the peer review panels. But is it not true that the policy is written and as it will be implemented on a campus by campus basis and even a department within the campus basis of what a professor is supposed to be doing? Isn't it a bit more objective when on this particular metric for student success than just somebody comes in and says, oh, you made, or a number of students come in, you made us feel a little bit bad today because you said this? I mean, I was led to believe in the information I've gotten thus far that it's a bit more objective on this particular criteria. I know some of the research teaching, some of the other things might be a little more subjective, but this one I thought was a bit more objective than the others.
So all of these criteria are exactly as you say. They are department-based at each particular institution, and how it is that research, teaching, service, and now student success activities is assessed, measured. All of that is going to be absolutely based on what is appropriate within that department, within the context of that discipline. But as you say, the way in which tenure decisions are made hasn't changed at all. Every tenure decision a faculty member goes through an extensive tenure process, normally 6 years. At each stage of that, they are assessed by committees in their own particular department, in their college, by their department chair, by their dean, by their provost, all making recommendations ultimately up to their president. And our board has delegated that ability to award tenure to their presidents. That rigorous process hasn't changed in any way by the process that we put in place.
Okay, thank you. Further questions of the committee or online here for relative to this post-tenure review, student success? I guess, am I putting that right? There's always been post-tenure review, or there has been post-tenure review, but this adding student success as a metric into that. I see no further questions. I think that kind of covered your slate, unless you want to wind it up for us.
It does. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and appreciate the flexibility to allow really the team to be able to walk you through these issues today.
Absolutely. We had it done number 25 here, and then I'll come to you, Chairman Smyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quick. I know everybody's ready to go, but I just want to thank the chancellor and her team. for coming over today. It's very informative. And I want to say one more thing. That you mentioned it earlier about going down to Eastman and focusing on workforce and the needs of industry in educating our students. And I just want to keep you, urge you to keep that focus on our institutions that are not just giving an education, but really educating our students where there's a real need for our industry. And so thank you for that.
You know, yesterday was a sad day.
Yeah.
We had our media day for the Fountain City Classic, and earlier that day, President Frederick had called me Monday, and a student had been killed on campus by a bus accident. And of course, he's in this book. He was a sophomore linebacker that was going to play in the football game and was tragically killed on the campus. And
I'll provide the details because Chairman is looking, shaking his head.
yeah, and
It
I
was
just
a-
wanted.
Tragic event. The student was in the crosswalk by the student union crossing the street, and one of the buses, obviously the bus driver did not see the student and hit the student and killed, the student was killed. You know, it's a tragedy. He
Yeah.
was a football player. And so I know I've talked to the president and she was definitely shaken. She was on the scene. The State Patrol is assisting with the investigation. And so we'll go through that process, and it was devastating. And I know she was working to make sure that they had counselors on that campus to be able to assist faculty, staff, and students.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we had a prayer vigil for him in Columbus yesterday, and it was a sad day, and we recognized him there, and I just wanted to mention that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
I was completely unaware of it. You know, so you get focused into something you don't see,
Yeah.
see the news, and I had not seen that.
And I won't be able to recall all of the tragedies that we've had recently on our campus. Unfortunately, it's more than just Albany State.
Yeah.
We had a fatality at UGA around a hit and run.
Mhm.
We, you know, again, it goes back to the conversation Juanita Hicks had around mental health and suicide prevention. We have had a few student suicides in the last month. We had one at Georgia Tech, UNG. UGA, we had one back in June at Savannah State. So again, mental health is critical right now for our campuses and for our students. And it's really more than students, it's also for the faculty and staff.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. And I mean, just on the raw numbers perspective, I mean, you 340 students, you know, there are people that aren't students that are visiting on the campuses. People are away from home. Things happen. And I mean, I think we all know the issues with social media. Everybody looks at social media and they see, you know, bright, shiny, you know, life that somebody else is living and think theirs is maybe not as good as it should be. And I spoke to a group a couple of Mondays ago, and it was a high school football team. And it's just, put that away if you can. It's not, you know, not real life, you know, as they say. So, but thanks for your attention to it. Allow me, just as we wind up here, to kind of set the stage for what we'll do the rest. Thank you, first of all, for being here. I know we have the technical college system back. We're going to try to get with them to the committee and have them visit with us here while we're in special session. We'd like to do that. We're going to have a couple of institutions, including Governor's Western, talk to us just about their delivery model. Again, this isn't about a competition with the university system or the technical college system. It's just providing, you know, more opportunities for people to be credentialized or, you know, obtain a certification or a degree to do that. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. I know you had a schedule. So several of you may have even had a schedule that you were able to move around and get here for us today. And I thank you for doing that. It doesn't go unnoticed of what all you do. And just let me say this is we do live in, you know, difficult times around for everybody. And then, you know, be reminded for all you do for those 340,000 plus folks and the people that work for you, that, you know, nobody calls when they had a good meal. You know, it's everybody always calls you if something went wrong at the restaurant. So for all the people, and you still try to address the people that have a complaint and a call, but just know there are a lot of people that I hear from in my district. I'm sure that Chairman Smyrie hears from in his, that are very pleased with the delivery that's happening at the University System of Georgia and Technical College System of Georgia and the value they're getting. And you know, as we continue to strive to make it even better, you know, a better value. But just allow me to say this to you. Thanks for what you do. You know, we'll try to continue to get better at it. One of my favorite sayings that Coach Russell used to have, well, my favorite one is, if they don't score, we don't lose. We're doing that pretty good in Athens right now. But he always, you know, had this situation, if we, you know, you weren't getting better, you're getting worse. And I think we're striving to get better. So thank you for that. Anything further from the committee? We'll get out of here on time. And again, I thank you to the committee members. We'll meet our regular schedule next Wednesday if we're in session, 1 o'clock. Thank you very much. Without objection, we'll be adjourned. I see none. We are adjourned.